Hello again, YouTubers. It's another one of those board videos. Last time I showed you the grey boards as laid out on my Wargames table, and now I'm showing you the boards after I've done some work on them. Essentially what I've done is I have undercoated all of the boards in a brown paint, acrylic or latex if you're in the United States. I got this from Wilkie's, a local store here in the UK, and the colour is Java Bean, although in fact Java Bean is no longer produced by Wilkinson's, but there is a similar dark brown colour. So what I've done with these boards is I have gone over them with the dark brown colour on top of the sanded polyfiller which I showed you previously, and then what I've done is gone over them with a dry brushed lighter colour, and the colour is called Chocolate Dream, and again is from Wilkinson's, and that's just been applied lightly over the base colour to give this mottled finish. I've done a couple of additional pieces. This is a hill which I've done from a piece of foam hill from Total System Scenic. I'll show you an example of that, which I have, if I don't make you too dizzy, over here. This is a standard Total System Scenic expanded polystyrene hill, which I have butchered somewhat using a hot wire cutter and then a heat gun to round things over. I've gone for what I call caricatured hills with flat tops rather than the dome type hills that you might find in real life, because, well, frankly, they wouldn't. I've just knocked some of the boards on the floor, but never mind about that. That's live broadcasting for you. Anyway, I've stuck this thing on top. This type of thing I've stuck on top of the board and then covered it in polyfiller and roughed it up and so forth, and then dry brushed on top of the base coat to give this hill-like appearance. This is what it started off like, and that's what it's ended up as. So I've not done too many of these, I've just done that one. Moving along here, I've done a slightly larger one. Same technique again, and then the other boards are basically flat. It's my intention to put terrain pieces on top rather than try and do too many sculptured pieces and overdo things. These boards are just the base for the Wargames terrain. I've got some separate hills and roads, but we'll not talk about that for the moment. You're more concerned about the board than anything else. So that's as far as we're up to for the moment. What you heard crash to the ground before were these boards. I've marked these end because these were actually offcuts, and I've gone ahead and I've textured and painted them. But the problem with these is that they're actually a little too narrow by only a matter of millimetres or inch, about half an inch, something like that. But they are actually too narrow, so I can't fit them in the middle of the board as I'd intended to, because by doing that I'm going to throw things off slightly. So by marking them as an end, it's just a reminder to me that when I'm actually laying out the board, I just stick these tiles at the end rather than in the middle, so that I don't lose the symmetry of all the other boards, which basically would simply not go together properly. So that's all for the moment on these. I'll now take you and show you something else that is a bit more interesting perhaps. Okay, so we're now upstairs in the workroom for the moment. These boards are a stage further on than the ones I showed you downstairs. What's happened with these is that I've covered them today in a mix of PVA and water, approximately 50-50, but that's not precise. I've added a tiny amount of dishwasher rinse aid to help the liquid flow, and then, having covered the boards in PVA, I've gone ahead and flocked them using Woodland Scenic's flock, and that's this one here, which is the blended turf T1349, which seems to be a bit difficult to get hold of from certain suppliers, but nevertheless that was full when I got it, and you can see I've used a fair amount of it, but not too bad really when you consider that I've done these 5 large boards and 2 small ones, so that's pretty good. I'm going to need to order some more of it. So for the moment, I've gone over and done the boards with the flock. This isn't the final finish. This is just basically an initial coating, and it needs plenty of time to dry before I start fiddling around and putting other types of flock covering on it. Been fairly straightforward, a matter of just daubing on the PVA mix and then scattering the flock over it. I've left a few pieces just to make it interesting, and I think it's turned out reasonably well. I've tried to make a feature of one of the pieces here. You can see a bit of a sand pit or a dried pond or something like that. I'm going to put some vegetation around it and some differing colours of flock so as to give a more realistic appearance, but overall not bad for starters really. Okay, so that's all on this instalment about the boards. I've got a couple of other bits and pieces which I'll show you in a moment or two, and which I hope you might be interested in. Next thing to show on the aspect of terrain is the church for the American Civil War, American War of Independence. This is the Perry's Church, which I've painted and put on a hardboard base. Done some texturing and so forth. I'm quite pleased with how this has turned out. The picket fence isn't in fact fixed in position at this time. I've got to glue that in position, but before I do that I want to do a little bit more scenic stuff, some plants and such like. And then the next item, also American Civil War stroke American War of Independence, is the ramshackle barn. Again, I've done a fairly simple paint job on it, nothing too exotic, and then gone over the base with some polyfiller as for my terrain boards, and touched it up with various textures and things. I've used that glue and glaze for the windows, which I think gives quite a good effect actually. It's then been washed over in a dirty ink wash to give it some character. That's virtually finished. There isn't much more to do on this one other than a few, I think possibly a few bits of plants and whatnot, and again you can see the windows there are all dirty and ramshackle, as indeed the name suggests. So that's those two items done virtually. I've been through a bit of a hiatus in painting, simply because real life has got in the way. I've had a few things to attend to, and I've been concentrating on the boards, of which more in a moment. Since I started doing this video, which was actually a few days back, I've actually managed to complete the boards, and this is the board in its the tiles, but the board itself is now in its 4'6" by 10 foot terrain mode, and all of the tiles have been completed with their initial coat of weathering, not weathering, sorry, Woodland Scenics medium grass tone. I've left a few bits exposed to give a bit more interest. Quite pleased with how this hill has turned out. The next stage for these now is for them to be sealed with diluted PVA, which will come out of a spray bottle, give them a good seal, and then it's my intention to go over them with different tones of greens and browns to bring a bit more texture and colour to them, make them a little bit more varied, and then they'll be sealed again. I'm not going to go overboard with such items as clump foliage and all that sort of stuff, because the boards have got to be serviceable. They'll be on here for most of the time, but they'll also be taken off and placed underneath the board, the main board itself. I keep referring to boards and tiles and boards, which is very confusing. What I mean to say is that these are tiles and underneath here is the board. So what I'm going to do basically is I'm going to leave them on the top for the most part, but they will be going down underneath the board at some point. Probably put side to side like books. But I want to make them serviceable, and there's no point in putting loads of tufts and stuff all over them, which was only going to rough off. I can put that on when I'm doing a game. So that's for the moment all I've done on the terrain tiles, and I've now got to just do the finishing touches. It's a slow process because I've only got so much space in which I can do these tiles. I don't want to do them actually on this board because I don't want to get crap all over the floor basically and all over the walls or whatever, because I'm a fairly messy worker. So I have to do those upstairs on what is my railway board for the moment, but which hasn't actually got a railway on it. So I'll be moving back up there with some of these tiles and spraying them, and I'll give you some updates as we go. I'm not going to get any more videos done before Christmas by the look of it, so I wish you all the best for Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Cheers now.